Will Dragon Ball Daima be Dragon Ball GT 2.0? There's about 6 things I want to cover, and I'm going to let you decide on your own whether or not it will be, or whether or not it should be called GT 2.0. So, number 1, the obvious is that Goku becomes a kid again. Yes, this is an idea borrowed from GT. If you haven't seen GT before, in the very first episode, much like with Daima, Goku becomes a kid again. So yes, this is an idea borrowed from GT. So you could say that's 1 point for Daima being a GT 2.0. I'm going to get to all this. After the 6th one, I'm going to get to all, I'm going to get the reasons out. And number 2, the characters that Goku hangs around, like Glorio and Pansy, they kind of look similar to Trunks and Pan from Dragon Ball GT. I mean, Pansy's name is literally Pan with a Z and a Y added to it. So that could be number 2. He hangs around 2 characters that are similar to his best friend's kid and his granddaughter. That's number 2. Number 3 is that these 3 characters potentially have Dragon Balls in their bellies like the evil dragons. Now, a lot of you who've seen the English dub know them as shadow dragons, but that doesn't make any freaking sense. They're evil dragons, and they're much more accurately called star dragons. Their title is Xinglong, not Shenrons, which means star dragon, right? Using Chinese characters and crap like that. But that's a whole nother topic. I'll explain that in another video, potentially. And so yeah, like those orbs in their bellies could be Dragon Balls. They could be, I'm not saying they are, they could be, as of right now, September 7th, they could be Dragon Balls. I'm not saying they are for a fact, but they definitely could be. And then number 4, did I already say number 4? This is number 4 right here. Number 4, there's probably another set of Dragon Balls. Just like in GT, in the very first episode, the Black Star Dragon Balls, also known as the Ultimate Dragon Balls, got introduced. And just like this, there's another set of Dragon Balls. Like I mentioned in the trailer breakdown, there is a guy summoning a dragon, and the dragon's name was Dotorus or some crap like that, Dotorusi or something. And so I'm thinking that's the new dragon's name, because he summoned it exactly like Dende did. Watch my other videos to find out what I'm talking about. He summoned it just like Dende did. So there's definitely another set of Dragon Balls for a fact. Potentially. And then number 5, I got one more after this one. Other things like traveling to different planets and potentially making the cast smaller. That's also like one small detail. So they travel to the demon world, but there's a whole bunch of different worlds that they travel to. It's even in the promotional art. You know what I'm saying? They travel to the demon world, demon realm. They travel to different worlds and all this stuff. And just like in GT where they're traveling space, now it's just kind of been replaced with the afterlife, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then number 6. Daima does take place after Buu, but before the end of Z, where GT was originally supposed to air. So here's a little fact about this. Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball Daima actually take place in what GT, the time period that GT was actually supposed to take place in. They take place in between the end of Z and the Majin Buu conflict. That's where GT was originally supposed to take place. I'll link the interview, or I'll just put a picture of the interview right here when I'm editing the video. You can see it for yourself. GT was supposed to take place in between this time period, and that's where Dragon Ball Daima is taking place. I know a lot of people want to say this is Toriyama's interpretation of what Dragon Ball GT would be. He hasn't said that in any interview yet. I mean, well, for obvious reasons. But if you would think they'd probably say, they probably want to say that, oh, this is Toriyama, what they did with Broly, right? You'd think they'd want to say, okay, this is Toriyama's interpretation of GT. They did that with Broly, oh, this is Toriyama's interpretation with Broly. Even with Bardock, they did the same thing. So it's not like they're scared to do this. And if all the series, like GT, it's not like they're I would say Broly and Bardock, well, especially in the West, and especially in America, are more beloved than GT. So if anything, them being scared to say this is Toriyama's interpretation of GT, that just wouldn't make any sense. So maybe he's just doing, he's taking ideas from GT because he can, and he doesn't care, and he just wants to, do his own thing. He's taking ideas from it and doing something else that's almost similar to it, It's kind of like the Broly and Bardock thing, except they haven't like outright said this is GT 2.0. You know what I'm saying? So I'll let y'all decide that. But then I want to talk about how Daima is definitely borrowing from GT's story, but it's obviously a different story. They're not traveling space. Well, they could be. They actually could be. There was a ship in that one trailer, so they could be traveling space. But what's weird is a lot of people don't realize that Dragon Ball does this all the freaking time. It borrows from Toriyama work all the time. GT borrowed from Dragon Ball by turning Goku into a child, right? Dragon Ball Super could literally just be called Dragon Ball Z pre-End of Z. Like, Goku and Vegeta wear their Cell Art clothes, like everything throughout the entirety. The logo of the show is just Dragon Ball Z's logo. Even with Daima, it's just Dragon Ball Z's logo with Super or Daima slapped onto it, you know? Even the little intro, like the intro for the episodes for Dragon Ball Super was just the Chala Head Chala music. So it's Dragon Ball copies from itself all the time. And there's even more examples, like with the Dragon Ball manga, for example. The Red Ribbon Army came back, and even though this is OG Dragon, like they came back from OG Dragon Ball, and they came back later on in the later part of during the Dragon Ball Z era of the manga. So it's like Dragon Ball it's just borrowing ideas from itself all the time, even just other Toriyama works. For example, the crossover that bumped the ratings originally in Dragon Ball, the Dr. Slump crossover. What do you think that was supposed to be? It was a nostalgia trip. You know what I'm saying? Not only that, like you got Frieza from Dragon Ball Z in Dragon Ball Super. All this stuff returned to Dragon Ball Super. Pretty much what I'm saying is all of Dragon Ball is pretty much one big nostalgia trip. Maybe more, there are some parts that are more nostalgia trippy than others. I would say the later parts of Z, GT, and Super, and even Daima are more nostalgia trip-like than the rest of, like, because obviously the original manga is where everything stems from. So you're going to want to be nostalgic for that, right? And that's what they're, getting all the nostalgia from. So it makes sense. I mean, GT literally came out 10 years after the original Dragon Ball was airing on TV. By the way, watch the videos I did for every rating share for Dragon Ball Z and GT. I've made those so far, but I'll do some more on Super and Daima as they come out. Well, Kai and then Super and then Daima as it comes out. But you know what's really annoying? It's really annoying to hear people or see people crying over Dragon Ball Super not being back. You know how embarrassing it is for grown adults to be crying about a show? You gotta be one depraved bastard to cry over a freaking TV show, let alone a cartoon. And it's not like you're getting anything new. It's Dragon Ball Super coming back. If it comes back, it's just gonna be animating the fourth iteration of Frieza as a villain, at very least. Dragon Ball Super as a series is almost entirely inconsequential. And I'm not saying that as a diss. What I mean by that is Dragon Ball Super lacks suspense. And this series, Dragon Ball, is already known that it doesn't have much suspense by this point because of the freaking Dragon Balls. You got Dragon Balls that can bring everyone back to life. That kind of kills suspense for you. But then you stack on top of that deities befriending the protagonist and the story being stuck in a 10-year time gap. The only actual time there was ever a semblance of suspense in Dragon Ball Super was during the Zamasu Trunks stuff. And that's because you don't see them at the end of Z. Like, how many of you went into the Tournament of Power knowing it would end with Universe 7 winning the tournament and then wishing every universe back? You'd have to be incredibly naive not to see that coming. Dragon Ball Super itself, I coined this by the way, Dragon Ball Super has negative suspense. As in, you're so aware of what's going to happen next, the only uncertainty you get is when events don't play out exactly how you thought they would. Let me make one thing clear though. It ain't children crying over Daima or Dragon Ball Super, because children don't critique Dragon Ball on the freaking internet. It's grown adults crying over this. Grown adults wasting their time on keyboard cockfights. But here's the reality though. Here's the reality. If you were really upset with the state of Dragon Ball today, if you were really upset with what's going on with Daima and Super and the situations in Japan, you would swim your little internet ass to Japan and go fix it. You would actually do something substantial about it. Moral of the story, y'all, don't bitch over anything, and especially don't bitch to other people on the internet, and actually check your references. And if you want something done, go take the action to do it. All right, y'all. See y'all in the next one.